right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. We had a nice little 3-week hiatus there after our last episode from concluding from the Super Bowl there. So it was nice to kind of hit the reset button a little bit and spend some time at home and I guess do whatever else we had to do in 3 weeks' time there. But we're recording episode number 42 here for our Wednesday, March 9th episode. And we're going to be looking at free agency and kind of making our best guesses on where everybody's going to be lining up in a little bit of a matchmaker that Zach made for myself and Armand. So before we get started into the episode here, we'll say hello to the fellas and then we'll get this thing rocking and rolling. So we'll throw it to Armand first. Armand, how was your 3-week little hiatus there?
Oh, it was great. I've been so cold all winter here in PA and all over Saskatchewan, and finally warming up a little bit and doing some stuff outside, going cross country skiing. I was gonna hit Little Red and go snowboarding there as well, and just to enjoy the outdoors a little bit more here. It's been a lot nicer outside, and I can't wait to do more outside activities now that we don't have the risk of frostbite after just being out.
Well, yeah, and with the amount of snow I think we got there too, that you could probably go snowboarding until just about the middle of April. I'd probably make a good guess there. It's just never ending snow here, I guess. I don't know, Zach, did you guys get that much snow as we did?
Yeah, absolutely. We got quite a bit of snow there on Friday, and then overnight into Saturday, it just kept on coming down. And then a little bit again this afternoon, actually. It's been quite a bit of weather, but it's been really warm the past couple of days, which has been nice.
So shy of shoveling, what else did you do on your little bit of a break there?
Oh, it's that time of year again. Been spending a lot of time on the cell phone, cruising through Twitter, keeping up to date on all the reckless speculation leading through the NFL Combine, and now a week away from the start of the legal tampering, which I'm sure has been going on since like Thanksgiving.
Just like the legal gambling we're going to get to in a little bit here too, I think.
Absolutely.
Oh man. So before we get started here, just a little kind of a neat little tidbit. It is to the day today that we are recording, I believe, that we recorded our very first episode, Armand. We recorded it on, was it March the 7th, and we dropped it on March 8th last year, if I remember correctly. If I have my numbers right, but we're hitting our 1-year anniversary of dropping the pod, which seems extremely bizarre. I went back and watched that first episode and I was like, oh man, A, we were real nervous, and B, that was a long episode, and C, oh man, we figured it out as we went. I think that's for sure, but it's hard to believe it's been 1 full year. So we're real happy to have that first season under our belt, and now, well, we're hitting round 2 here, and obviously we got Zach on board partway through last year, so it's been awesome. So happy anniversary, I guess, of the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast here.
Yeah, if you're just joining this ride now, you don't have to go back and look at our greatest hits if you don't want to. Just start listening now and listen while we got a bit more polish, I guess.
Maybe just go in and look at the hot takes we had last year, because I think we hit all of them. Or you can just take our word for it, I think. We'll hit up a little bit of insiders and headliners here before we get into it. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with how we run our off season, we do it every 2 weeks, not like in season where we have it every week. So we'll be recording and dropping this one on the Wednesday, March the 9th, and then we won't have another one for 2 weeks following. In this, we have the insiders and headliners. We go through some of the news and notes. Then we have a keep, trade, cut segment where Armand deciphers between 3 players of equivalent value on who you'd like to keep, cut, and trade. And then we kind of talk about that for a little bit and kind of give him our 2 cents or what we think there. Then we have our off-season segment, which is kind of our meat and potatoes of the episode, something kind of fun. Lots of times it's like a game show type event or some sort of analytical work. And then at the end, we have ice cold hot takes, which we are slightly tweaking this year. Instead of all 3 going every episode, we're going to have 1 spicy take, and then the other 2 kind of get to throw their 2 cents in on what they think of that take. So insiders and headliners is kind of like our news, what's going on in the league. And I tipped at it a little bit there in the intros. This one just happened I dropped on our plates at about 3 o'clock here on Monday, and Calvin Ridley, who has been a really hot trade target, I think, for a lot of people in dynasty leagues, and a lot of chatter around where he might end up this offseason. Same thing, kind of a trade target in the NFL, I would say too. But he has now been suspended for the entirety of the 2022 season and potentially even longer based on what they may find from investigations. But he was gambling on games in the 2021 season when he was taking time off for mental health. So I mean, if I was his lawyer, I'd be putting my head through the wall, because immediately after the suspension came out, he was tweeting saying, yeah, I only bet $1,500, and yeah, I bet on my own team. And the tweets weren't helping the cause there by any sort of stretch of the imagination. But this is a tough one. And I think I'm going to throw it to Zach first, because for one of two reasons: A, you have him on your dynasty squad, and B, New England was one of the primary trade targets or landing spots, I guess, for him. So how's this one hitting for you here at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah. So when I got the news on my phone, the students had just left for the day, and I was excited, had a great day. Really good behavior in the room. Things are looking up, and I had to sit down, and I'm sure I looked like my dog ran away or something, because my first thought was, or rather all afternoon, I was thinking, okay, so the Pats cut Kyle Van Noy, freed up about $5 million in cap space. They got to be angling for a signing or something coming down the pipe, maybe a trade for Ridley. And sure enough, I see Calvin Ridley on the Bleacher Report thing on my phone, and I'm like, this is it. It's going to be a good day. Is suspended for the entire 2020 league year. I was like, oh my goodness. So
yeah, not quite the Calvin Ridley news you wanted to hear here today.
Yeah, certainly not. So I think it hurt more almost for my Pats fandom. I was really hoping that the Pats would land him. He's definitely, or what I thought would be, the number one X receiver that I think the Patriots are in desperate need of. But that's clearly not going to happen, at least not this year. Fantasy wise, I think it made my life a little bit easier. Actually, it may have signaled that it's time to blow that team up and sell.
Hey, I offered you a trade for him about a week earlier, so I'm really happy that one didn't go through. But I'll be there to pick up the pieces if you're going to blow that little bad boy up. That's just
Calvin Ridley's still on the market.
Hey, that's what I think of that. Not so much this time. Oh man, I was talking to a coworker right after, and I was thinking, like, man, I actually almost got him in a trade like 4 days ago, and I was like, oh, if that would have happened, that'd have been an absolute nightmare. But at least, like, last year was the speculation he's going to come back. At least you know for the full year you're not getting him, I guess. I mean, glass half full kind of guy over here, maybe, but that's I imagine you're not the only person there, Zach, that's either owned him or maybe went out and traded for him this offseason, because he was a hot commodity that people wanted to pick up, because the speculations were that A, he was coming back, and B, he was going to get traded to a big team that wants him. So, I mean, I imagine there's a lot of people out there that put themselves into that position. This one is a tough one. Maybe it's a little bit on the minor news, I would say, but I've been holding on to him in my big dynasty league ever since we drafted him. David Njoku, I was really excited for him to potentially leave the Cleveland Browns and land somewhere that he's going to be able to share a higher target percentage, or maybe a team that's going to utilize the tight end position. But unfortunately, it was released today that the Cleveland Browns are using their franchise tag on David Njoku. They were the very first team to put that, I guess, fantasy relevant franchise tag. We're going to see a couple here in the next couple of days, but this one, I don't know, is this impact any of your guys' team, or what's the perspective? I know Cleveland does run a double tight set, but they have, I think, 3 tight ends on their active roster at this point that are what maybe be fantasy worthy.
You know, I think Njoku is the best talent though of them. Has the most upside. He's the most athletic of them. Now I know Hooper's there too, and they paid big money for him, and so I think It's not the worst though for him because OBJ is gone, and after OBJ left, I think I wasn't watching him too closely, but Jordan, you said you had him on your league. Didn't his numbers kind of go up after OBJ left?
A little bit. Jarvis Landry's target share went up a little bit, but then it had to go down. Well, I mean, I would speculate that a lot of the do was with Baker's shoulder injury, so there's a lot of checkdowns, but his number share did go up.
Yeah, and that might be one thing that you might look at if Cleveland doesn't target another wide receiver in the free agency here. Maybe we see Njoku actually break out in Cleveland. It's not the end of the world. There's worse scenarios that could have happened to him, but it's not either the best one either. It's kind of like a neutral, like could have been better, but at least it's not the worst.
Yeah, at least he's still on a team that at least centers tight, double tight sets and targets the tight end position in the red zone a ton. Oh shoot, his name's escaping me here. He was drafted last year, 2 years ago. I think he had like 20 targets all season, and I think 14 of them were in the red zone. I'm trying to remember.
For the Browns?
Yeah, Harrison Bryant.
Harrison Bryant.
Yeah. Like just does not get targeted until he gets in the red zone and just vultures all of those Cleveland touchdowns. But yeah, a little bit smaller news, but continue on the tight end train here too. Another one that fell in our laps late this afternoon was Jack Doyle, the former tight end of the Indianapolis Colts, retired after 9 seasons in the NFL. Now, this one I'm going to throw out there as a tidbit, and you guys can tell me if you're going to shut it down or not. Are you going and actively trying to pick up Mo Alley Cox now this offseason? If your dynasty still going through waivers, it's probably not going to cost you much. Is that a name that's kind of maybe get a little bit of interest or a little bit of buzz in there?
I am going to say hold your horses because as far as I am aware of, Mo Alley Cox is currently or going to be a free agent this offseason. So the only surefire returning tight end on that roster, as far as I know, is Kylan Grace Granson. He was a rookie this year, 4th round draft pick, 127th overall. He's a super freak athlete out of SMU down in Texas. He profiled really well at the Senior Bowl, and then he did pretty well at the scouting combine, if I remember correctly. The Colts also have a decent chunk of change. They are 5th in the league in cap space going into the offseason. So not to give away the free agent segment, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were at least interested in some of those bigger names that are soon to be free agents.
Yeah, very possible. That would have been a nice little lying spot for Njoku if he didn't get franchise tagged, I think. But
yeah,
I'll have to wait and see on that one. There's some other pieces of news and stuff that's been released the last little bit, especially, but I would call them speculation type pieces. Like we're looking at the Amari Cooper, where they're talking about that they're going to cut him or potentially cut him to save cap space or whatever it may be. There's nothing concrete yet, so we're not going to report anything. It'd be a lot of speculating. This offseason, if you're new to us, you're going to realize that a lot of the offseason is speculating because there's not a lot of news that happens. They come in chunks throughout the offseason. So we do a lot of speculating. But at this point, that's the only 3 things that we really have to report on at this moment. But we are going to be hit with a significant amount of news, I would say, within the next probably week and a half, with the free agency period opening up, franchise tags coming out. So like I mentioned, we aren't recording it for 2 weeks. So if that's something that you want to follow along on, I would highly encourage you to be paying attention to our socials. Follow us on Twitter, predominantly on Instagram and Facebook is where we post a lot of those news and notes and our insiders and type stuff like that. So I would encourage you to follow that along. We also have our personal accounts where, especially I know myself and Zach are very active on Twitter. You'll be able to follow us on Twitter there as well. But the spot where I think most of our information comes out is on Instagram there at the 306 FFB. So if, like I said, a lot's gonna be happening in the next week and a half. You'll be able to follow along with us if you follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well too there. So throwing that little bit of tidbit out as well. Anything to add here, fellas, before we get to keep trade cut? Right on.
Pitter patter.
Okay, so for those of you that are new to Keep Trade Cut, this is the equivalent of kill one, marry one, do one type thing. The old what do you call it? I guess the game, I guess, you used to play when you were kids, I suppose. Talking about your high school crushes or whatever it may be. So the way we do this is we pull together 3 individuals within certain realms, maybe be veteran wide receivers, free agent players, which I try to stay away from as we're doing free agent talks in the next episode, those types of things. And Armand is going to decide on who he's going to keep, trade, or cut. And then Zach and I kind of maybe dissect and whether we agree, disagree, what we do differently. But we let Armand do the analytical, original analysis, I suppose, on the 3 players. So for this one, we're doing the keep, trade, cut of sophomore running backs. So the 3 running backs we're focusing on is Javonte Williams, sophomore running back from the Denver Broncos, Najee Harris, sophomore running back from the Pittsburgh Steelers, as well as Travis Etienne, the sophomore running back from Jacksonville, who actually did not get to participate in the season. So I guess you call it what's the phrase there, Zach, when it's not you're not a true freshman, but you take the redshirt freshman. Redshirt freshman, that's what we'll call him. So in sophomore or redshirt freshman, we'll call ETN here. But Armand, what are you going to do? Keep, trade, cut?
Well, I'd love to keep trade for, but unfortunately that's not in the cards right now. But I'll start with my cut. I am going to cut the one who hasn't proven themselves yet, the one that could be the one that got away because he has a hell of a lot of potential. But I'm cutting Travis Etienne. Just out of the 3 guys, he's not going to get me as much trade value as the other 2, and I don't know for sure what I'm going to get from him in the NFL yet. Whereas the other 2 I know have a pretty high floor and ceiling. So I'm cutting Travis Etienne. Now the one that I'm going to trade. So I went with Najee for trading, simply because he had the bigger season. He's a bell cow. He has that name value. He was in the first round. I think I can just get a little bit more value out of him on the trade market, but get similar production out of him as I would Javonte Williams. And Javonte Williams could explode this year, but I'm not getting trade value from purely speculation, right? A lot of people might be high on him and might be willing to give a lot for him, but I think I'm going to get a lot more for Najee. So I'm keeping Javonte, the one that I think could potentially have the best season of the 3, but might not have the same trade value on the trade market as the other guy who is clear-cut workhorse back.
Armand, you had Najee in a redraft league, correct?
Yeah.
And Zach, did you have Najee in any of your leagues this year?
No, I ended up with Najee for a little bit in a guillotine league.
So here's a question to throw out there before we kind of go at Armand. If you obviously we all own Najee this year. Would you be happy with what you got from him, or were you just kind of status quo?
Well, where you got him, I was like, it wasn't like he beat out his value, but he was to his value of where you drafted him.
Yeah, it was it's a weird one because and I'm in a position where I own Najee and Javonte in the exact same dynasty league. And I just sit there and think like the hype around Javonte is incredible right now. And even though he had the lesser of the season, like you look at their fantasy finishes, and by points per game, it was a little bit stronger of a difference. When you look at their point, like Najee finished RB4. Granted, there is a lot of injuries to get him to RB4. And then Javonte finished back-to-back with Melvin Gordon as RB17. But there's a significant more buzz around Javonte. And everybody's kind of like, oh, Najee, you did what you did. But he finished as RB4. So this was an interesting one. I wanted to see what you thought. Zach, do you agree with Armand or you disagree?
I do agree with the Travis Etienne. He's just the only one of the 3 that hasn't proven on an NFL stage to A, be able to stay healthy, and B, when healthy, be able to produce. Najee Harris and Javonte Williams, you're kind of 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other, where you're looking at Harris, you kind of know already what you're going to get. And that's a pretty good running back. That's probably for sure, like a top 8 running back, I would say, going into next year. Maybe even possibly top 5 running back.
Depending if they address their their offensive line position here in the offseason, I suppose.
And you would assume that they're going to have to, right?
Yeah.
And then you're looking at a player that in Javonte Williams, who, all of the next level stats suggest that he could be a superstar, given the an increase in touches and having that spotlight to himself. And it's kind of like going back to what you said. It's just speculating. We're assuming, and many people are assuming, that he will be a stud in the event that Melvin Gordon isn't there next year. So I think right now the safer bet would be Harris, but if you find yourself to be a gambler, Javonte Williams is that ticket that could pay off in a big way.
Yeah, it's man, I had a hard time with this one because you guys know how much I love Javonte, and I just see it as Najee's floor is higher, but Javonte's ceiling is higher. Like, do you want the safety, like kind of like Zach had mentioned, or do you want to hit big? And I did honestly, I thought about like this: if I didn't own either of them, who would I try to pursue in a trade? And I think the answer is Javonte. That's who I want to pursue in a trade. But for some reason, I feel like you can get Najee cheaper. Like, it's a weird situation where Najee's proven it, and maybe it's because it wasn't the superstar type rookie season you would have expected. But for some reason, I just feel like the buzz around obviously Javonte is significantly bigger than Najee. But I think I agree with you, Armin. I think I would play the safe route and just keep what I got. I think knowing that Najee is capable of that top 5 RB and doing that with a less than stellar offensive line. And you look at like if you actually go back and watch Najee's tape, he's getting maybe a 2 yards, 3 yards a carry, but he's getting touched. Like his yards after contact there were like at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. Like he was fighting hard for those 3 yards. Like imagine if he gets touched at 4 and goes for 7. Like his numbers are completely different, and we're thinking about Najee in a completely different lens. So I don't know. I love Javonte, but with the buzz around him, I think I'm going to deal Javonte and hold on to Harris, I think. Yeah, I never thought I was going to say that. I think I actually wasn't going to until I'm sitting here listening to you guys. But yeah, I think
and you can't go wrong with either of those two. And who knows, maybe you can't even go wrong with Etienne. I think he's going to be used differently than the other two.
Yeah, like it's funny because going into the draft, me and Armand talked about this. We used to do supervision together all the time last year, and we were talking about those two constantly. And for a while, we had Williams ranked higher than Najee in dynasty drafts, but you weren't going to get Harris at 104 or 105, and that was the discussion. But now we're sitting here looking at here potato, and Williams was going in 105, 106, or later in a lot of rookie drafts, depending on obviously one QB. Like I think for us, we went Najee, then we went Chase, then Pitts, then Etienne, then Williams. Correct?
I think so.
Draft?
Yeah.
Now we're sitting here kind of going, all right, well, we're basically we're splitting hairs at this point, but
well, that's where we talked about trading back in the draft. If you had the first few picks to get Williams and get more out of it, if you knew Williams was the guy you wanted and you wanted him over Harrison Etienne, because didn't you do that? You traded the 102, didn't you?
I traded. How did that work? I can't remember how it all went down. Oh yeah, I had 102. Sorry. Chase went 101 and I had 102. I traded up to the 102, but I traded back my 104 to the 105.
Oh, okay. That's what you did.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to trade 103 to 104 to try and get Williams, but I wanted Pitts at the 3rd
if you would have took Williams at the 4, I think I would have cried. I reluctantly would have taken Etienne because at the time I had James Robinson too, but would have been all right. I think things would have worked out. But that's what makes this thing so interesting, because we sit here and talk about this, and like I said, it's a lot of speculation. But I remember last season we talked about a keep trade cut, and it was Cooper Kupp, Oh crap, I can't remember. It was people with changing quarterbacks or new landing spots. I can't remember what it was, and we all were like, maybe we'll keep Cooper Kupp, probably cut him. And now we're looking at it like, oh well, that was stupid. Wasn't maybe the best of the decisions. That I think it was round 5 ADP, I think is what it ended up being, actually, was that one. But see, I wonder if I can pull it back up, but might be scrolling here for a little bit. But that's what makes this segment so much fun, because it's just kind of who do you believe in, and where do you want to go, and who has the value, and what can you get for them. There's different ways of going at it. Like I remember last year, Armand, you went for it as like just best player available you're keeping, and then I was talking about like maybe trading for value if there was no players you liked. And there's different angles you can go at the segment every time. So as we get into these offseason segments, there'll be a little bit deeper discussions maybe in some of them, but these ones, like Zach had mentioned, is a little bit of splitting hairs. But talking about our last season, we're looking now at a new major sponsor coming up for the upcoming season here. So for this sponsor read, we're just going to take the opportunity to thank everybody that made last season such a large success. Obviously, first and foremost, we'd like to thank Limitless Gear. They were our very first ever major sponsor, and we are very, very thankful to have them on board. We had other sponsors prior to them, but they are the first major sponsor to jump on for the full season. So really want to thank them and appreciate them for everything they did for us with kickstarting up our podcast. And then I'd also like to thank these other sponsors, that helped out make the Super Bowl charity event so successful, and then allowing us to make the contribution of $2,000 to Kids Sports. So thanking Paul Landscape and Water, Cook Golf Course and Darcy's Pro Shop, PA Bolt Supply House, PA Source for Sports, Fresh Air Experience here in Prince Albert, and finally Rock Trout Event Center for hosting the Super Bowl event and allowing us to kind of tag along and make it our own, I guess. So without them, the last season wouldn't have been what it was. And we're currently in the process of looking for our next major sponsor. So stay on the lookout for that announcement when that comes.
It could be you, folks.
That being said, we got our off-season segment of the episode, or segment of this particular one is Free Agent Matchmaker. So we got to give a big thanks to Zach for making this one happen. He spent some time to make this nice little prod for us, and of course, me and Armand got a chance to go toe to toe at this one again too. So Zach, will without further ado, we'll cue you up here.
All right, so this is a matchmaker style game where I will present 3 or 4 players for each fantasy football positional group. And these players are all players that are going to be free agents in the coming weeks. I did not include any players that have been cut to the at this moment. These are all players that have expiring contracts. We also didn't include any of the players that we thought as of Monday evening that will be getting the franchise tag. So players like Devontae Adams, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin were not included because we believe that eventually they will be either extended or they will receive the franchise tag in the next day or so. So fellas, how this game is going to work, I will go to the position group and you guys can just take turns discussing where you think that player is going to go. On each player's slide, I have selected 3 teams that I think would be reasonable landing spots. You can go ahead, pick whichever landing spot you think that player will go to, and then we'll move on. Before we begin, fellas, who wants to go first?
I will graciously allow Armand to go first.
All righty. So without further ado, ready to go there, Armando?
Yeah.
All right. On to the quarterbacks. So our first quarterback is Jameis Winston. He's 28 years old. Last season, he played in 7 games before the injury there. And over the course of those 7 games, he had just under 60% completion percentage, 1,170 passing yards, 14 TDs. And the stat that really stands out, he only had 3 interceptions. According to PFF, They predict that he will receive a 1-year, $7 million contract. And I speculate, I think the teams that may be in on Winston are the newly named Washington Commanders, possibly a reunion with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or maybe going north to the Indianapolis Colts. And this goes for all of the players that I mentioned. There is also the option of them re-signing with their current team. So Armand, who do you think will sign Winston out of the 4 teams that I mentioned, and why?
All right, I'm going to start this with, I made a cheat sheet, but I forgot it at work when I came home today. So I'm going off memory here. So forgive me, folks, if I overlook a small detail. Winston, I was thinking about it. His completion percentage still isn't that great, right? He still has a little bit of work to do, but those INTs definitely help his case here. I'm looking at maybe a team that doesn't necessarily want to win right now, but wants to be competitive pretty quick in the next year or two here. So I'm leaning towards Washington for him. They got a lot of pieces in place. They're still fairly young, but I don't think they're wanting to compete for the Super Bowl necessarily next year, but in the next few years after that. And that'll give Winston a little bit more time to get situated in Washington, and kind of figure it out a little bit. Tampa Bay, been there, done that. I don't think they want to go back to him. And I think they're still in a position where they want to compete for the Super Bowl, even though they're without Tom Brady this year. And then Indy, just his style of play and Indy's style of play, I just don't think it necessarily jives.
I got a question here for you, Zach, before we continue. Are we allowed to go off the board?
I will think less of you. I put time into picking these teams. I will certainly think less of you.
Oh, rats. I have a nice landing spot that I think is very compatible, but I will stick to the game.
All righty. So thank you, Armand. That was great. I do agree. I do think Washington would be a great fit. I think he would do wonders for Scary Terry. Just rip it from the butthole and just chuck it downfield.
Yeah. You know, like that's a type of receiver that Winston needs, right? Is a receiver that's going to win those 50-50 balls.
Yeah, it's like
look at what he did with Godwin that year. I think he threw 23 INTs, but I think he also threw 40 some touchdowns that year. It was incredible.
Yeah. It's like the memes where it's like, McLaurin's got to be down there somewhere.
Yeah,
and he just rips it.
But now he'll know because he actually can see.
Yeah, he got
all I think of him now surgery. Is when he was shooting that basketball with his eyes closed. It was just like, oh man.
All right, so next we have Jordan, and he's going to be talking about my man Mitchell Trubisky. Mitchell is a young 27 years old. Last year he backed up Josh Allen in Buffalo, his first season in that trash city. But prior to going to Buffalo in 2020, he had a 67% completion percentage, 2,055 pass yards, 16 TDs, and 8 interceptions for the Chicago Bears. PFF predicts he will receive a 2-year, $14 million contract on the open market. And I have identified the Pittsburgh Steelers, Washington Commanders, and the New York Giants as possible landing spots. And like I mentioned with Winston, there is the chance that he may re-sign in Buffalo. But I think this guy more than anyone else is looking for a starting gig, and he's not going to be getting that in Buffalo.
So I do like the landing spot of the New York Jets or the New York Giants there. Sorry. But my only consideration for that is I see Mitchell Trubisky and I see Jones as a very, very comparable quarterback. They're two of the same. They're mobile, but they have their issues. You know, they're not elite quarterbacks by any stretch of the imagination, but but I see Trubisky a little bit on the higher side. So for similar reasons, Washington, Armand liked. I think there's pros and cons to having Washington in there, but the team I think I'm going to select is the Pittsburgh Steelers, because we've seen what the Steelers were capable with a quarterback that was incredibly immobile and could not stretch the field with his arm. So they have the pieces that to be very competitive. Sorry, they made the playoffs by the hairs on their chin there with a couple tie-break scenarios in week 18. But I do think that the Steelers are very competitive team. They have a solid run game. If they can address their offensive line situation, they have the young, very capable Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, among other wide receivers if Juju Smith sticks around. If not, the Ray McLeod seemed to be getting a lot of target share this last season, and including obviously sophomore season of Pat Freiermuth. I think the Steelers have the capability of making a solid run, but they were a quarterback away from doing so. And adding the ability to be able to run, including be able to stretch the ball down the field, I think that is something that Mitch Trubisky can do. They're not going to rely on Trubisky to win them any football games by any stretch of the imagination, as they are going to be a very run-first team, much they were trying to be last year because of that was pure necessity. But he does have the capability to push the ball downfield, which will allow the run game to thrive a little bit. So I don't know if this is exactly where he will land, but I think it is a very nice match made in heaven there between the two, especially with taking a rookie quarterback for the Steelers is not going to get them over the promised land, but Trubisky, with a little bit of experience, might be able to do that.
The Steelers don't need the best QB in the world, but Trubisky would be enough.
I have Trubisky in a super flex. He was the 3rd overall pick the season before I picked up this team as an orphan. And it's been the joke of the league ever since that in the year where guys like Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes are drafted, the loser owner that owned the team before me picked him over both of them. And so I am hoping against hope there, JC, that he ends up not only in Pittsburgh, but as a starter in Pittsburgh.
There's no way he loses that job to Mason Rudolph. There's no way.
Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah. Sure. Haskins over Rudolph. I'll give you that. But there could be 100 quarterbacks in the NFL, and Mason Rudolph's going to finish 101. That guy's terrible.
All right, Armand, the final quarterback to look at today is our boy Fitzmagic.
Fox Sports.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is a fatherly 39 years old. And I think the age is catching up. He played in exactly one game this season. But in 2020 with the Miami Dolphins, 69% completion percentage. That's the most Ryan Fitzpatrick number ever. Just under 2,100 passing yards, 13 TDs, and 8 interceptions. PFF predicts a 1-year, $7 million contract. I have identified 3 programs that he could go to: the Denver Broncos, the Indianapolis Colts, and Fox Sports as a wild card landing spot.
Oh, that's so good. If you guys are watching this at home on YouTube, we're finally back on YouTube with the off-season segments here. If you saw that before, obviously you understand why we're laughing now. Fox Sports, that is good stuff, Zach. Oh, I enjoy that.
I want to go Fox Sports here because he'd be a great personality to watch. I think I'd tune in every week to Fox Sports to watch Ryan Fitzpatrick break down the game. But I think he doesn't want to go out like he did last year. He went down week 1, right? And I think he's the type of guy who would want to finish a season on his feet and then retire if he could. So one more kick at the can for old Fitzmagic here. And what better place than the place that's doing one-can kickers of Indianapolis. you know, they went with the Phillip Rivers, they went with Carson Wentz, bring in Fitzmagic and let him rip for a year and see what you can get. They are a team that they run the ball a ton, so he wouldn't have to throw the ball a lot. And when he does throw the ball, he'll have good old Michael Pittman or T.Y. Hilton catching it for him. It'd be a great show to watch, I think.
You know, I think if one of those teams ends up drafting a Q, like say for example, Denver doesn't win the sweepstakes, they draft a Q or something like that. I don't know, just spitball, you know, like teams like Washington, or if they draft a Q, I think that would be a real good landing spot for him too. You know, like it's hard to identify either team's going to draft a quarterback, but if a team drafts a quarterback, that would be a really nice compliment to go, you know, like a Malik Willis, or maybe he's not NFL ready, but you want to give him time to develop. That's a real nice pairing. You might as well just insert, we are drafting with the 11th overall pick, Malik Willis and Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know, like that's how you're going to announce it at the draft.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
I think whichever team, or if a team ends up signing Fitzpatrick, it's with the eye towards the future, towards the draft in April, thinking that if the guy that we draft isn't ready come week 1, we have this bag of bones that could be the bridge quarterback until our rookie is ready to play.
And increase your viewership with his chest hair hanging out at press conferences. You know, people are getting in.
Out of the options you gave us, Indianapolis has the better history of producing quarterbacks compared to Denver, I'd say.
Yeah, and Denver, I'm curious what they're going to do here. Even if they don't land Aaron Rodgers, they can't be going into the next season with Drew Lock and Teddy B. There's no way. But hey,
alrighty, so
speculation, as Zach calls it. I like it.
So Jordan, you are now the first running back. And the first running back we are looking at is Cordarrelle Patterson, 30 years old. This is a multi-purpose weapon. This past season in Atlanta, 618 rushing yards to go along with 6 touchdowns. And you can complement that with 52 receptions, 548 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns through the air. He finished as the running back 9 this past season in half-point PPR leagues, and PFF predicts a 2-year, $12 million contract. I have identified possible landing spots as the New York Jets, the Miami Dolphins, and the now Las Vegas Raiders.
Okay, so process of elimination here. I'm going to end up with the New York Jets, but I'm going to tell you how I'm going to get there. So the Las Vegas Raiders, they have a gigantic committee, and they are never, ever, ever going to get rid of Jalen Richard. He will be a Las Vegas Raider till the day he dies. For some reason, since he's came in the league, they just keep signing him to catch the ball on third down every odd possession. So the Las Vegas Raiders, they already have kind of a committee of backfield. So I feel like them adding this individual after he's probably going to receive a decent chunk of change, like Zach had identified by Pro Football Focus there. They're going to be getting about a $12 million contract ballpark. I don't think the Raiders are willing to do that for already a solidified backfield. Miami, I would really like to see them go for somebody in the draft or a bigger name free agent. I don't think Cordarrelle Patterson fits the bill. But the reason why New York Jets sticks out to me is for a few reasons. I really like the rookie running back they picked up in the draft. We talked about him coming out of UNC last year and how they were kind of a combo back to each other with Javonte Williams there. So they were kind of I guess a little tandem back. We weren't really sure exactly what we were going to get. Now with Tevin Coleman looking like he is either going to retire, get cut, get traded, we don't really know what's going to happen with Tevin Coleman. He was kind of just a thorn in the back for the New York Jets as a fantasy player. But also looking at Braxton Berrios, who is an upcoming free agent as well. Now, Braxton Berrios, for those of you who are unaware, is the wide receiver for the New York Jets. He was also their gadgetry guy running jets and stuff like that out of the backfield. And he was also their kick and punt return player as well. So if they do not retain Braxton Berrios, I think it'd be a really interesting fit for Cordarrelle Patterson, who until last season was a kick returner type player. He was a special teams player, but now kind of turned into a gadgetry type running back player. So I think that would be a really good fit with an already established, well, I shouldn't say established, but a up and coming running back. Be able to pair him with a 30-year-old Cordero Patterson, and then be able to still use Cordero in this gadgetry type offense while not running into the ground like he had done in Atlanta. So I do like the New York Jets upcoming this season.
You convinced me, Jordan. I was thinking none of these three teams actually for Cordero, and then you talk about the Jets there, and it also reminded me of their head coach comes off the whole like San Fran coaching tree, and what's
Depth
the
of
other
the running back position.
what?
Depth of the running back position. That's what
Yeah.
San Francisco loves.
Yeah, and the gadget plays, the designed plays to get a playmaker, the ball in his hands, like Debo, right? That's actually, I was thinking of him going to San Fran would be a good fit, but New York Jets would be kind of similar idea.
I'm interested to see what Saleh can do here in his second year. That was somebody I was really hoping that Detroit was going to get their hands on. Now I'm very happy with Campbell, but I'm interested to see what Saleh can do. But I think that would be an interesting weapon to pair together with that offense, especially with the gadgetry option. But who knows? Maybe it was a one-hit wonder. But regardless, you can put him back there with that speed and return some punts, I suppose.
Very good. Armand, next is James Conner, who is still only 26 years old. This past season, he had 752 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns on the ground, 37 receptions, and 375 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. Finished the season as running back 5.5 point PPR leagues, and he's predicted to receive a contract in the ballpark of 2 years, $13 million. Some teams that I thought might be interested in Conner include the Texans, the Bills, and the Dolphins. And then don't forget about re-signing with the Cardinals.
All right. Well, this one, I'm going to eliminate Houston right off the bat. I think James Conner is going to be wanting to be on a team that is going to be competitive. And Houston, I don't see a reason why next year they'll be competitive yet. But you never know. I could be wrong. But so that leaves me down to re-signing in Buffalo and Miami. I'm almost I kind of want to have fun with this game, so I'm going to say he's not going to re-sign with the Cardinals. And then looking at Buffalo and Miami, I think Buffalo is going to take a different running back that we're going to be talking about next. So I'm going to go with Miami, where you have Gaskins there. But Conner is a complementary back to the type of style of running back that Gaskins is. I think they would complement each other well with the thunder and lightning kind of idea there. And James Conner is a type of guy who will cede to another guy. He won't be upset if he's having to share touches with another player. But also will be very productive when he does see the field. Good team guy, good guy to have around in the locker room. And I think he'd be a great fit in Miami, who might be looking for a guy like that.
Oh, man, I hope he resigns. I hope and think he does resign, and I hope Edmonds goes someplace else. I had them both on the same fantasy team, and that was just an absolute nightmare.
Lastly, for running backs, Jordan, you have what some people may consider the premier running back in this class. Somebody whose name I misspelled on the slide. That's awesome. Leonard Fournette.
Fournetter. Fournetter, I hardly know her.
Leonard Fournette, 27 years old. Last year he had 812 rush yards, 8 TDs on the ground, 69 receptions, nice. 545 receiving yards, and 2 TDs through the air. Finished the season as running back 7.5 point PPR leagues. Predicted to get $16 million over 2 years. And I proposed the same 3 teams: the Texans, the Bills, and the Dolphins.
So I don't think he's going to resign. I think with Tom Brady retiring, they're going to go a different direction and almost a rebuild. That's my speculation. I don't know. They might be able to sign a premier quarterback, and then that's the direction they go to resign playoff Lenny here and let him run. I'm gonna start calling him Fournetter. I think that's just classic. I like that now. That's Fournetter. The only 2 teams, I do think Buffalo would be a nice fit for him, but they would have to end up obviously clearing some space in that backfield for him because with having the 2 they already have there, and both kind of being, I would consider misses in their draft positions. Like they had Singletary, and everybody kind of thought that was who they're going to roll with, and then they ended up going and drafting the name's escaping right now.
Zach Moss.
Thank you. Drafting Moss, I believe, in the 3rd round, and what would be very considered a miss now after watching him this last season. They would have to remove, I think, and clear up space for Netter here. But I think 2 is I think if he goes to Houston, it's going to be chasing money. As a 27-year-old, this is probably going to be his last significant contract. So if he doesn't get a significant offer to a playoff contending team, maybe he does chase the money. So that's maybe why Houston could be a contention. But I think just Miami's a perfect fit for this type of guy. He really battled off-field problems and kind of what seemed to have it figured out in Tampa this last little bit, kind of got put into check between that organization there. So maybe now with a bit of a stronger head on his shoulders going into a new organization, I think Miami would be a solid fit. They're really missing a hard hitter at the running back position, a guy that can feast on the goal line, and in a team that is, I think would be a real contender type offense. You have Tua that can make a big step forward. You have obviously Jalen Waddle have an incredible rookie season, and you have a lot of other solid pieces to that puzzle. So I think that would be just a perfect landing spot. And I think a lot of fantasy managers would be really happy if Leonard Fournette ended up in Miami. So that's where I'm going to go with that one.
With what you said, it sounded a lot like you were describing James Conner's situation there too.
I like James Conner a lot, and I think you can kind of find similarities between the 2 of them, 26, 27 years old. Both probably this is going to be their last contract. James Conner could be the guy that chases the money too, because he's a guy that's kind of been the roller coaster. He had picked up the slack for Lev Bell and then got a nice little chunk of change. Then he got hurt, and then he got to basically pick up an almost a negative deal going to Arizona as a prove-it deal, and then basically did that this year. So he might be a guy that chases the money and retires off his contract. So that'd be something interesting that could happen from that one.
See, where I was sitting at with Fournetter here is I just wanted to say his name again. No, but in all seriousness, I thought between Miami and Buffalo for him, if they both gave him similar contracts, I think he chooses Buffalo because he has the better opportunity to be the guy there
and win a championship, I would say too.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that backfield with Fournette and Allen? Like
just that perfect tandem.
Those modern day 230-pound linebackers are going to be sitting on the bench with broken and bruised ribs with these 2 battering rams coming down.
If that's the case, if he returns, do you think Josh Allen goes trifecta in a row, quarterback number 1? Do you think that's going to dip into his rushing performance? Do you think he still stays as QB1?
Lots of those tutties were red zone, goal line, and I mean that's kind of Fournetter's thing.
Yeah.
3 yards in a cloud of dust.
He is Fournetter now. That's his name. That's Fournetter.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I'll have to send him a DM or something over Twitter to let him know.
Yeah, not playoff Lenny, you're Fournetter now.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the receiver room. And like I mentioned earlier, yes, as of recording Monday night, Devontae Adams, Mike Williams, and Chris Godwin are all still scheduled to be free agents, but we presume that they will be franchised or sign long-term deals. So we're not even going to talk about those guys. Armand, the first receiver that we're going to look at is Allen Robinson. 28 years old. This past season was a bit of a down year for our boy here. 66 targets, 38 receptions, 410 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. He finished the season as a disappointing wide receiver 86, and is projected to get a 3-year, $45 million contract. I have identified the Miami Dolphins, Detroit Lions, and Indianapolis Colts as potential landing spots. And everybody knows he is not going back to Chicago. I think between him and his agent, they made that pretty clear. So Armand, where do you think this guy heads?
Yeah, this one is a tougher one, because you also got to wonder, are people looking at him as this last year was a blip and he's going to be back to his normal Allen Robinson numbers next year, or is this last year signs of a decline for him, a steep decline? I'm looking at the teams there. I don't think he would necessarily want to be part of the Detroit rebuild, although you never know, but I'm going to eliminate that one pretty quick here. Looking at Miami and Indianapolis, I'm looking at what they got for young weapons and who he would complement the best with. I'm thinking Miami would make the most sense. I think he would complement Jalen Waddle a little bit more, and him and Devontae Parker could be the two kind of more possession-like guys, or the big body type guys, and Waddle can continue to be that string, or that jet guy, the burner, who goes deeper, gets those underneath routes and takes them for long yardage. I think that complements him a little bit more than Indianapolis, who Michael Pittman is probably pretty similar to him and what kind of receiver he is, and is just kind of breaking out. So he'd kind of be on the outside looking in there for as far as where his tool set would best be used.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, Armin. Especially when you got like Pascal and you got other feasible guys. If Hilton kind of stays for another year, you got feasible guys. I think that's a great fit, is Miami. I think that's just a perfect fit for him. Nice compliment to Waddle.
Yeah.
Miami has like absurd amount of money available this offseason.
Yeah,
I think
number one
like,
team, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I think it's like 70 million. They basically have the entire roster of the Pittsburgh Pirates available to spend. It's obscene how much money they have to spend this offseason.
61 million they have available.
So I could see them
be a big prove it year for Tua, so they might bring in a lot of weapons to kind of be like, here you go, you got weapons now, show what you can do.
Certainly. So I could see Miami almost being ignorant with the way they spend money, probably just overspending to get some of these veteran playmakers in, to do exactly that, to complement Tua and to give Mike McDaniel a good sense of what does he have to work with Tua. Are they able to continue building towards a championship team with Tua, or do they have to tear it down after this season? So Jordan, next up is one of our guys, Juju Smith-Schuster, still only 25 years old. This past season was cut short, unfortunately. He only played in 5 games, but over those 5 games, he had 29 targets, 15 receptions, 129 receiving yards, and 0 touchdowns. He finished a disappointing wide receiver 137 this season. He's predicted to receive a 1-year, $8 million contract. This is somebody that had the chance to go to Kansas City last year, but turned them down to sign a 1-year deal with Pittsburgh. And I think he gambled on himself, and I don't know if it paid off. So Jordan, what do you think?
In all honesty, all 4 teams, it could be a good landing spot. They're all 4 teams that need the options.
I think I forgot to mention those teams. Do you want to rattle them off for everyone?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, we got the re-signing in Pittsburgh. We also have the Philadelphia Eagles. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then we also have the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the team that needs him the least is honestly Pittsburgh. They have two very young, capable wide receivers, and then they can kind of plug and play that third position. Or if they want to run that tight end set, they can do that as well. So I think out of all the teams, necessity wise, I think that would kind of cross Pittsburgh out, even though it was kind of bizarre that he would put the prove it deal 1 year kind of betting on himself deal, not Calvin Ridley betting on yourself, but Juju Smith betting on your ability. I think he would maybe want to stick in Pittsburgh. I think that's kind of the almost the feeling I'm getting, but you could plug or play him into any of these three positions. Philadelphia obviously needing a wide receiver assistance, maybe to kind of pair up with Devontae Smith. Maybe they're going to go for a bigger body in the draft is kind of the sense I'm getting, maybe like a Drake London type player. But I think just the perfect fit for him is maybe go to Kansas City. That's a team that they have their obviously their number one wide receiver. The Pringles, the Robinsons, they're not panning out. I think at that point, you're kind of chasing after lost causes. So you might as well go and get somebody that is very, very capable, has silky smooth hands, and thrives in those under routes. Allow Tyreek to stretch the field, use them in those gadgetry type plays where you can get the ball in his hands in space with speed. And I think it'd be a nice little pairing with Travis Kelce, and they can kind of run those almost those divide routes or those stagger routes where Kelce maybe takes the under and he takes the over, and then Tyreek's maybe spaces the field down a little bit. So I think that would be an interesting fit. And I think it's an opportunity, maybe if he's going to have to take a lower end deal, very similar to he took the deal with Pittsburgh. But if Kansas City is willing to offer him a 1 year, $8 million or a 2 year, 13, whatever it is, why wouldn't you go with Kansas City and a team that's arguably in the best position to try and win? The Jaguars are in a rebuild. You're going to be there for the long haul. Maybe you want to pair yourself with a young quarterback like Trevor Lawrence. The Eagles, maybe they're a playoff contending team again this year, but Kansas City, they're always top 5 in Super Bowl favorites. So if you're going to go on a short deal, why don't you go to a team where you can win a ring in the process?
I agree with you there, Jordan. That's a very good one. He'd be great complimenting Casey, and he would definitely slot in pretty quick there. He wouldn't really be fighting for a starting spot or anything, and he fits well as a secondary option, not the wide receiver 1, but like the wide receiver 2 or 3. He's probably one of the best at it.
Like, I think for football, that's a great landing spot, but as a Juju owner, Zach, would you be happy with that?
I think so. I think I would be honestly the most happy with that. Let's look back to his big year. I think that was 2019. I think
yeah.
His big year. He played beside and usually behind AB with the Steelers. Brown was the one that was getting all the attention from the other teams, either their elite corner or being bracketed by a corner and a safety over top. Once Brown left, it quickly became apparent that Smith-Schuster might not have it within himself to be a dominant number 1 receiver. If he went to Kansas City and he played behind Tyreek Hill, that would really replicate, I suppose, the situation he was in Kansas City, in Pittsburgh with in Kansas City. So that would be a landing spot that I would be quite happy with. And I think of the social media possibilities, him and Jackson Mahomes. Oh my Lord.
He's not allowed to go to games anymore. There's no way.
Yeah, allegedly, right?
Yeah.
So Armand, next up is somebody that many people may have forgotten about as he hasn't been in the spotlight in a little bit, but we are talking DJ Baby Shark. Shark is 25 years old, very similar to Smith-Schuster. He only played in 4 games this past season. In those 4 games, he had 22 targets, 7 receptions, 154 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. On the season, he finished as wide receiver 33. This was somebody that got into Urban Meyer's doghouse early on, was somebody that Meyer described as a receiver that is big but plays little or plays small, I think were the exact words. Potential landing spots that I've seen on social media and that I could see being a fit myself would be the Oakland Raiders, rather the Las Vegas Raiders, pardon me, the Detroit Lions, and the Philadelphia Eagles. What do you think, Armand?
Oh, he is a tough one. I don't really know what to think of DJ Chark.
He's an anomaly.
Yeah. I'm leaning towards the Las Vegas Raiders though. They've been looking for help in the receiving room. They've been throwing everything against the wall, hoping it sticks, and just trying all sorts of different guys there. The only thing that they have going for them is Waller and Renfro, and having Chark maybe as a complementary piece to them. I think his abilities when he's doing well would complement Renfro and Waller. Big body that you could throw down the sideline to, as opposed to Waller and Renfro doing the more short routes and medium routes kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm thinking like, does Detroit want him? Like, I don't know. Like, Detroit is absolutely plugged up with 23 to 27-year-old wide receivers, and it's just like somebody's got to hit. Like, like maybe we'll use our draft capital someplace else and take them. But I don't know. This is a good one, Zach. You can make arguments for all of them.
Yeah, Philly. He could do well in Philly, but I'm just thinking back to like Aguilar in Philly, and I don't know. It almost feels like DJ Chark would be Aguilar all over again.
Chark, more than any of the players that we have mentioned or that we will mention, is somebody that for whatever reason, I am seeing him all over social media over the last week or so. It seems whenever I scroll through Twitter, there's speculation. Like the Raiders are interested, the Lions are interested, the Eagles are interested. I think it's because of his youth and the fact that he likely won't garner the same type of money as a Robinson or a Smith Schuster, that he could be somebody that's kind of like a sneaky play, somebody that you buy low on.
Yeah, especially coming off only a 4-game season.
Absolutely. So we said the Raiders for him. Lastly, Jordan, this next guy is somebody that I am quite fond of. Christian Kirk, a 25-year-old receiver from Arizona. This year was Kirk's best year. 103 targets, 77 receptions, 982 receiving yards, and 5 TDs. He finished just outside of wide receiver 2 territory in fantasy, finishing this season as wide receiver 26. He's predicted to receive a 3-year, $35 million contract, and possible landing spots include, resigning in Arizona or going to Chicago, possibly Green Bay if they can unload some more contracts. And the one that's gotten the most buzz on social media lately is him signing in Buffalo, in that garbage city. There were pictures on social media a weekend or two ago of him having dinner with Josh Allen and their respective partners, and that set the rumor mill ablaze. So, Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, and then they got vaccine man himself. He's allowed to go look for trade offers now too, old Cole Beasles.
Yeah, he might go run for the Republican Party. Who knows?
Yeah, measles, the Beasles. I think this one is more simple if we know what's happening with Rodgers. If Rodgers is sticking in Green Bay, I think they got that wide receiver room shy of Devontae Adams. They let Valdez-Scantling walk. They let Lazard walk, even though Rodgers has talked about that connection he does like with Lazard. I think that's a nice fit, Christian Kirk, to be able to pair up with Devontae Adams. clearing up some cap space, signing him in, maybe for a short term but a bigger money deal type situation. I'm not sure. I think if Rogers does stick around, I think that's a nice little landing spot there. But for some reason, I was just very attracted to the Chicago Bears for him to land there. Just with them losing Robinson, they have Mooney, but after that, who are they going to keep running with? You know, like Mooney's their young up and comer. They need somebody else to kind of be able to pair up with it and give weapons to Justin Fields. You know, you've given him the backfield. Justin Fields, it's his backfield to run with now, and you can only rely on his legs so much. I remember watching, it was at the semifinal game where they had to rely on, was it semifinal game where Ohio had to rely on him to run. I think he took 45 unnecessary hits, and it was like, man, this guy's just going to keep getting up. You can't maintain a long NFL career by trying to win yourself a national championship, taking 45 major hits. So you need to be able to give him weapons. And I think that's ideal spot because you need to be able to give him those options. Darnell Mooney, I think, is a budding superstar. I think he is a guy that is a nice little fantasy asset if you have him at this point, because he did produce big time for players last year. And I think Christian Kirk would be a nice little pairing for that. Now, would I like a bigger name or maybe a drafted player to go there? Possibly, because you can get that connection, but who's to say Christian Kirk might not be able to make that connection with Justin Fields as well too. So I'm gonna pick the Bears.
Well, and who knows? The Bears could take two receivers, right? Sign him, pick up a guy in the draft or another free agent.
Yep, for sure.
There's the room for him.
Kirk is somebody also that on social media has been getting a lot of hype from the analyst community, I suppose, the insider community. Lots of hype, people saying that his market will be exceptionally hot, as he profiles as more of a Z type receiver, somebody that can play inline and then also on the outside, whereas some of these other guys are strictly like a X or Y receiver. So Kirk is definitely somebody that I wouldn't be surprised if he has a hotter market than many people may think.
If he lands in Buffalo, who gets 13, him or Davis?
Well, Kirk will certainly have the money to buy what Davis wants, but who knows?
5 TDs in a playoff game, apparently.
Yeah, get a big number 5 gold encrusted chain. So we are now going to go into the tight ends, and they are very similar to what I said about the receivers. There's a very good chance that the first 2 guys we talk about may be tagged or signed to long-term extensions. The reason I kept them in was because the wide receiver pool of free agents is very deep, whereas after the first 3 or 4 tight ends, especially with Njoku being franchised today, it got pretty sad pretty quick. So the first tight end that I have for you, Armand, is Dalton Schultz, 25 years old, had himself, a career year, 104 targets, 78 receptions, 808 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. He finished the season as tight end number 3, predicted to secure himself a 4-year, $52 million contract. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets franchised by the Cowboys, but if that doesn't happen, some other possible spots may include the Bengals, the Dolphins, or the Colts. What say you, Armand?
All right, I'm going to make this very easy. You can call me a liar because now I'm going to say that he's going to stay a Cowboy. I like him as a Cowboy. I think the Cowboys like him. He worked very well last year, had a breakout season, and all the speculation around Amari Cooper leaving. It seems to make sense that Dalton Schultz would stay and continue on what he did last season. Bengals wouldn't make much sense to me with Uzama and Sample. And then Gesicki in Miami, and maybe Indy needs another tight end, but I think Schultz would stay in Dallas over all 3 of those options as well.
especially with the Jarwin news, I think too, that makes it kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Some like freak injury that active players don't typically get for Jarwin.
Yeah.
The reason why I included all these teams is they are all losing their current tight end. Uzama coming off an injury, but he did play in the Super Bowl, and he is also a free agent. Gesicki in Miami is a free agent, possibly someone that could be tagged or signed. And then the Colts losing Doyle, possibly losing Cox. And all three of these teams have a boatload of money to throw at a young budding tight end. Jordan, Mike Gesicki. This is an interesting guy. He's 26 years old. This season, he had 112 targets, 73 receptions, 780 receiving yards, but only 2 touchdowns. He finished the season as tight end 11 on the year, projected to get 4 years, $55 million. Possible landing spots include the Jaguars, the Chargers, and the Jets, as well as resigning in Miami. Now, I read this morning that Miami is interested in re-signing or tagging Gesicki, but the catch is Gesicki wants to be valued as a receiver. And if he designates himself or his agent designates him as a receiver, that'll affect the franchise tag number, because the franchise tag is position specific. And if he values himself as a receiver, he may be looking at getting some extra money out of that franchise tag.
Oh man, with Dan Arnold getting traded to Jacksonville, I'm gonna maybe dash that one out there, even though he did get injured to finish the season. I just think the nice little landing spot, even though this sucks because I'm a big fan of Donald Parham, I think the nice little landing spot is with the Chargers. Jared Cook did admirably in filling in there. Donald Parham did go down to that scary injury. By all reports, he's going to have a healthy recovery. But I just think that's a nice little spot. You're looking at Justin Herbert, young, very talented, young offense. And Gesicki is very, very gifted, talented, athletic player. And I think that's just another weapon to give to a young quarterback. Is going to make your team successful. So I just think that is kind of almost a picture perfect landing spot. The only thing I think that will get in the way of that is the Dolphins maybe franchise tagging him. But I do think the Chargers landing spot, it would be ideal, not only for him career path wise, for the team wise, but also for fantasy owner wise as well. Put it this way, if he lands the Chargers, I'm going to wish I traded low on him. Put it that way.
So going from one tight end who fancies himself as a slot receiver to another tight end that also fancies himself as a slot receiver, we have Evan Ingram, 27 years old. This past season, he had 73 targets, 46 receptions, 408 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did finish the season as tight end 23, projected to get a 2-year contract worth $18 million. Possible landing spots include the Chargers, the Jaguars, the Dallas Cowboys, as well as re-signing in Dallas. In New York, pardon me. And this is another tight end that has, whether it's on record or just through speculation and rumors, has been trying to market himself as a big receiver, as a slot receiver, and not a tight end for what I would imagine would be financial purposes. Armand, what do you think?
Oh, I'm almost leaning to Fox Sports on this one. I'm looking at him. I'm looking at what he brings to the table and the teams around. I don't see him necessarily catching the eye of a team that's wanting to compete necessarily right now. Just because he's not the prettiest ball to the ball. So I'm thinking maybe Jacksonville there. Like Jordan said, they had Dan Arnold who went down to injury. Maybe Ingram comes in. He fills that role for a little bit, and then once Arnold comes back, maybe they push him out to the slot like he wants to be, or fancy him a bit more of a receiver, and he can go do more receiving work that way. It's a team that doesn't have a ton of weapons as of right now, and he could help with that.
But it's
Very
so
good.
funny. All these old players are trying to frame themselves as tight ends to prolong their career, but now these tight ends are trying to frame themselves as wide receivers to get more money. Come full circle.
It's definitely been something that's been more common, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. I haven't heard it happen as much with the offensive side of the ball, but outside linebackers and defensive ends have been doing that sort of thing for a number of years, where one position is just much bigger contracts on the defensive line. So to review and to recap, Armand has Winston signing with Washington, Fitzpatrick signing in Indy, Connor signing in Miami, Robinson signing in Miami, Chark in Las Vegas, Schultz re-signing in Dallas, and Ingram in Jacksonville. Jordan has Trubisky going to Pittsburgh, Patterson going to the Jets, Fernetter in Miami, Juju in KC, Christian Kirk in Chicago, and Mike Gesicki playing slot receiver for the Chargers.
Bingo. Well, thanks for doing that, Zach. That was well done. I'm gonna have to step up my game here, I think, with our with some of my showmanship on my Family Feud or Fantasy Feud here, I think. So just with how with getting our feet wet here back into the offseason trend, and just with doing a deeper dive with our free agency stuff here, we are going to surpass the ice cold hot take for this episode, and we are going to start up our ice cold hot take segment on our next episode. So thank you for participating here. Obviously, with the free agent episode, those ones do usually run a little bit longer than usual. But other than that, I think that kind of wraps up our welcome back in here in episode number 42 here, fellas. Anything to throw in here before we end this one?
I just hope that next week or whenever we review the free agent signings that are happening next week, that a few of these guys that we mentioned, that we hit them on the head and we got them right. Would be nice to look back and see how many we got right, how many we got totally wrong.
Yeah, the old tip of the cap, eh?
I half agree with you, Zach. I hope I got all mine right and Jordan just dump trucked all over the ground.
I just know I'm not spinning the wheel come in 2 weeks' time again. I'm not sitting in McDonald's, that's for sure. Anyhow, thanks for listening, everybody, to episode number 42. That'll do it. On behalf of Zach, Armand, and myself, thank you for listening to the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. And we'll talk to you guys in 2 weeks, everybody. Fingers crossed for your home team. Hopefully get the free agents you want. Take care, everybody. Talk soon.